are no strings on me.
Hey, what is going on, everybody? It is your boy Carnage, your PrimitiveAK here, back with another video for you guys today. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. Today's video, we're going to be discussing some of the seven best tips to staying alive, and also the best tips and tricks to help you get better at Modern Warfare, because this game is certainly a lot different from previous Call of Duties, and a lot of people, including myself, have been making some of the same mistakes. So I figured it'd be best if I bring some of these mistakes to your attention and ways to improve upon those mistakes and get better at the game. So if you guys are new, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. If you did enjoy the video, I would greatly appreciate the like on the video, as it does help me continue to make more videos for you guys that enjoy the content. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. So the first big tip on the list, and this is one big tip that a lot of people have not actually discussed in a lot of the tips and tricks videos that I've seen both on this Call of Duty and previous Call of Duties, and that is to fill empty lanes where your teammates are not. Now this applies to both ground war, 6v6, 10v10, 20v20, whichever playlist you're playing. What I mean by fill empty lanes is that for those that have been loyal fans to my channel where I uploaded Battlefield videos, I used to talk about filling lanes on different areas of the map where people were not. Essentially, when you're playing big modes such as ground war, for example, there tends to be this massive cluster of enemies and your teammates where there's just a constant nade spam, shooting rockets down hallways, and a lot of people tend to group in that area. Yet one big thing that people are not doing in this game is that they are not flanking around certain spots and filling lanes where there are actually open areas where people are not. And this is something that you're going to want to be doing, so that way both yourself and your teammates do not get absolutely obliterated on the flank, because there is going to be that one smart player that actually fills the lane where your teammates are not, and it's going to cause for an absolutely hell of a match if your teammates are not filling those certain areas. So if you do notice that there is this massive cluster of enemies and also a massive cluster of your teammates in the same hallway, what you're going to want to be doing is check your flanks, check the certain routes around the map where your teammates are not filling those lanes, and you want to be sure that you're filling those lanes, because if you do not, then someone else is going to do it, whether it be your team or your enemy team. Most cases the enemy team is usually going to end up doing it, and it'll cause your teammates to get flanked from the side, and that is certainly something that you do not want to do. It'll certainly cause for you to lose all of your flags and actually end up getting defconned in ground war, or getting triple capped in regular 6v6 domination. So be sure to keep an eye out where those lanes are actually open, and certainly make sure that those are cleared out as quickly as possible. The next tip on the list is going to be stick to the meta. This is a pretty obvious one. Obviously, every Call of Duty, there's that one group of weapons that everybody uses, and nobody uses anything else besides that. You don't want to go around mixing stuff up. Now, obviously, if you're like myself, who's going for camo challenges, you're kind of forced to use every single weapon in the game. But Modern Warfare is, once again, a AR-heavy game, so you're going to want to be sticking to the rifle class in this game. If you don't necessarily care for camos, then I strongly recommend you use nothing but the assault rifles on this game. The SMGs are certainly decent at the game. There are a few SMGs that hit a lot harder than other ones, and they do have that AR range capability, but for the most part, you're going to want to be sticking to the assault rifles in this game, because a lot of your gunfights will be mid to long range, and the assault rifle category weapons such as the M4A1, for example, certainly hit the hardest and have the most range and also the highest ability compared to some of the SMGs in the game. You definitely want to make sure that you stick to the meta. The next big tip on the list is going to be your settings. Now, if you guys remember on my channel, we actually did cover some of the best ideal settings that you wanted to be using in Modern Warfare, but a lot of people may not have seen that video. So if you have not seen that video, be sure to check that out. I covered a lot of detailed settings that you guys want to be tweaking that a lot of people have not been changing, and it will certainly help improve the game for yourself and also make things easier, such as aim assist and also ADS sensitivity and also regular gunplay sensitivity. We talked about motion blur and a lot of other different settings, but overall, mess with your settings, and like I said, check out that video down below where I talked about the best settings. The next one on the list is going to be being aware of the attachments that you are using on your weapon. This is another big one that people tend to ignore a lot. People tend to look at attachments. For example, the most common attachment that people are going to throw on most of their weapons is the red dot dot sight, the reflex sight, or even the reflex mini sight. These are common attachments, but one thing that people are not paying attention to is that some of these attachments will decrease your ADS speed or your aim down sight speed. What that means is that it's going to mean that if you use certain attachments like the ACOG scope or some reflex sights that are actually available in the game, it'll decrease your ADS speed, and that is something that you do not want in this game, because the ADS speed in this Call of Duty is almost triple the amount what it used to be in previous Call of Duties for whatever strange reason. That's basically the way the developers wanted to make this game. So you're going to want to make sure that you're using certain attachments that do not cause that to happen. There's nothing wrong with using a reflex sight. I personally use it a lot as well, but you're going to want to be mindful of the attachments that actually decrease your ADS speed by a massive margin. So definitely keep an eye on that. I'll have more class setup videos talking about these attachments in further depth, but definitely make sure that you be mindful of those attachments that you're using. Next one on the list is going to be learning to predict. This is something that I do a lot on stream, and I actually mention it on stream a lot. When I play the game, I typically give commentary on my decision making and also ways to improve on the game while I'm playing. But one thing that people do not do is they do not predict. This is something that I do a lot. This is something that's going to take time. It's not something that you're going to learn overnight. But what you're going to want to be doing is the thing with Call of Duty players is that they are very predictable. Some people tend to make the same mistakes over and over, and they do not learn from them. We'll talk about that later in the video. But you're going to want to make sure that you're learning to predict where enemies are going to be at all times. This is, like I said, this is going to be something that you're going to learn over time, but once you master it, you'll be able to predict what people are going to do almost every single time. Now, if you guys remember previously, I actually mentioned about filling all the empty lanes where your teammates are not. That's something that you can predict in the game. For example, every time I play Ground War on the, I believe it's called the Quarry map, I can't remember the exact name of the map, but most of you guys that have played the game already most likely know what I'm talking about. One thing that I know is that I predict that players are always going to be down that hallway, especially if they have the C flag and I see a chunk of my teammates but I don't see any enemies on the radar. I'm always going to predict that someone's going to be looking down that hallway. So that's something where I mentioned filling all the lanes. You want to make sure you're on that flank, filling the lanes where the enemies are not, and it'll certainly make for an easy opportunity. Another big option that people tend to do a lot, and we'll talk about this later, which brings me into my next point, is to never double peek. This is something that I always know people tend to do a lot more than usual, and it's a bad habit that both myself and a lot of other players that I run into tend to make that same mistake all the time. So every time I get into a gunfight and I tend to deal, X amount of damage to a player and he goes around the corner, there's three things that player is most likely going to do. He's either going to A, double peek, which is something that you do not want to do. B, he is going to sit in a corner and wait for me to push, or C, he's going to lie prone down the hallway and try to get the angle on me, so that way I am not able to deal any damage to him and basically get outplayed. These are the three biggest things that people tend to do, and it is one of the most predictable play styles you can possibly deal with in Call of Duty. It has been in every Call of Duty as far as I can remember. So definitely, if you're going to play Call of Duty, if you're going to play Modern Warfare, don't do those same three mistakes and be able to predict when people are going to do that, because I can guarantee you, if you go play the game right now and you accidentally or you deal damage to a player and they go around that corner, they're going to be doing one of those three things that I mentioned: sitting in a corner, lying prone, or double peeking down the hallway trying to outgun you. Definitely be mindful of that. It'll certainly help you out a lot. I cannot stress it enough. Like I said, it'll take practice, but you'll learn it over time. And last but not least, for the 7 best tips for staying alive and also tips and tricks, this is a pretty common mistake that people are still making in Call of Duty games. It's been happening for as long as I can remember. I've been playing COD probably about 10 years or so, maybe longer, and I still see people making these same mistakes over and over and over. So I strongly recommend, if you're watching this, try to improve on it, try to break out of that habit. I still make this mistake as well, so I'm guilty. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But if you're dying in the same spot, stop going there. I cannot stress this enough. I deal with this all the time. This is something that people tend to do. I like to call it revenge killing. People tend to hate dying to the same person over and over. And what people think that a good idea to do is to constantly push that same lane over and over and over. Now, like I said, all these tips that I'm giving you guys tie into each other. So if you're dying to the same spot, dying in the same spot is constantly going to the same spot over and over and over is not going to help your gameplay at all. Like I said, tip number 1, fill the empty lanes. If you're dying to the same guy, filling the empty lane where he is not watching is going to help you get that revenge kill fairly easily instead of pushing the same spot over and over and over again. And obviously, once again, learning to predict what people are going to do. Chances are, if that same guy has killed you 3 times, he's going to be watching that same spot over and over because he thinks that you're going to be dumb enough to push that same spot. So once again, tip number 5, learn to predict. You're going to predict that he's going to be watching that same spot, so you definitely want to make sure you go around him, fill the lanes where he's not watching, stick to the meta where you can absolutely dominate people with assault rifles if he's killing you with an SMG. But overall, I hope these tips certainly help you out on improving on Modern Warfare. I'll probably have a more detailed video talking about some additional tips and winning more gunfights in Modern Warfare that'll help you guys improve more at the game. I'll have more videos down the road talking about some of the best assault rifle class setups, some of the top 10 class setups to use, and also some of the best flanking routes in the game, whether it be ground war or 6v6. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out. I'll catch you guys in the next one. It's your boy Carnage, your Primitive AK, signing out. Peace out, fellas.